everyone, welcome to the show. My name is Amanda Ostrander. I am a teacher-turned-homeschool mom, and this is Raising A to Z, a YouTube channel all about homeschooling. And today I'm going to answer the question about how long does homeschooling actually take? If you guys like my videos and you want to see more about my videos, make sure you go down and subscribe and then click the bell to get notifications so that you can get notified when I put out a new video, which is pretty much every Monday. A lot of people want to know, how long does it take to homeschool? Like specifics. I know a lot of people say it takes less time than traditional school, and that is very, very true. But exactly how long does it take? Like, what is a realistic day schedule looking like? So I'm going to answer that question the best I can in terms of what works for our family. I know the general rule of thumb is about 20 minutes per grade, but that can vary wildly depending on your kid. So I can tell you what works for our family and how long my homeschooling day is and why it is so much shorter than a public school. So our day starts with our morning basket. We do art history, we do word study, we do read alouds, we do all that in our morning basket. That's the first part of our day. Basically, the kids are just finished eating breakfast, or being honest, Zoe is usually still eating breakfast. She's a slow eater. And we start our day. And that is the first section of our day. It basically takes us between 15 and 20 minutes to do our morning basket. Depending on what we're doing, if the kids want to read an extra chapter, if we're reading a chapter book, it can go a little longer, but generally we're talking 15 to 20 minutes. Okay, that's section number one. Then we break, we go get dressed, brush our teeth, comb our hair, do all of that jazz. So then we come back, we regroup, and a couple times a week we start with unit studies. Not every day, but a couple times a week. We do unit studies. That takes us about 15 to 20 minutes. It's usually a reading activity with some questions. It might be a discussion. It might be an actual hands-on activity, but I'm aiming for 15 to 20 minutes for our unit study. That alternates between kind of science and social studies topics. It's just what works for us. And then as soon as we're done our unit study, the kids move on to their individual leveled work. And so then we do our language and our math. So depending on what they have to do, obviously times can vary. Generally, it's Alexi and Zoe take about 15, 20 minutes for their language arts. And then it's another, 15, 20 minutes for their math. Sometimes Alexi has a writing activity, depending on what day it is in her grammar book. And if she has a writing activity, it tends to take her a little bit longer just because it's, more steps. But generally speaking, she's kind of around the 15 to 20 minute mark to do her language arts. Actually, realistically, she's probably around the 15-minute mark to do her language arts. Zoe takes a little bit longer. And then, like I said, we move right into math. Math is again, 15, maybe 20 minutes, especially if it might be a little bit longer if it's a new concept or a new topic. But generally speaking, when they're done math, they're done for the day in terms of seat work. So if we add that all up between our morning basket, our unit study, and our seated workbook time, we're looking at between 60 and 80 minutes. So less than an hour and a half. And we've covered language, math, a unit of some kind, some reading, art history. We've done a whole bunch of things, and it's taken me literally about an hour to an hour and a half worth of time. And that's, again, this is kindergarten and second grade. So obviously you can increase the time as your kids get older, but I feel that's a really good amount, especially for kids under grade 3. And not only are we only doing that, hour to an hour and a half, we're only doing that 3 to 4 times a week. So for us, we do Mondays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. We do a full day. So everything, morning baskets, all of that. Tuesdays, we do morning basket and math and language. We don't do the unit study because we have to head out for gymnastics. And then on Fridays, we just do a morning basket, and then we do some kind of hands-on activity, whether it's an art lesson or a bigger hands-on activity that goes with our unit study. We do something different. But in terms of seat work time, that's how much curriculum-based work they're doing. So it's not an everyday thing either. I hear a lot of people get kind of concerned when I'm telling them that my kids are doing an entire day's worth of schoolwork in under an hour or an hour and a half. They get a little freaked out. I'm not going to lie. I've had a lot of people is it enough? It's yes. It's enough for a couple of reasons. Number one, that's not the end of what they're learning for the day. That's just kind of like their like structured lesson time for their day. After they're done, they still go and do learning stuff. There's a whole bunch of learning activities that they do that are not structured and scheduled in terms of what I'm teaching them. For example, Alexi has recently been doing a lot of like making movies with her iPad. So she's been like filming things, editing things, doing stop motions. She's been coming up with plots and storylines and doing editing and putting like filters and stuff on her movies to give it different looks. So that's a whole thing that she's teaching herself and learning how to do. And we're helping her when she shows us, like, oh, that's really cool. How about we look at like how to, the plot here. This doesn't really make sense. Let's figure out how we can make that better. But in terms of like the actual stuff, she's doing that. That's a learning activity that she's doing independently because she wants to do it. Zoe's very into like telling stories with her characters and building forts and things for her characters out of her Magna tiles. Our kids spend a lot of time playing outside. Sometimes, especially if the weather is not great, if it's cold or rainy, they are on their iPad doing things like Osmo, which is a learning program. Zoe's been loving Teach Your Monster How to Read lately. And so she's been doing a lot of that. And so our kids are still learning. It's all self-directed though. And it's learning through exploration and through creativity. And that's kind of a really cool thing. The other thing that I do that tends to be a little bit more structured is we do have certain things that happen on certain days that are learning activities, but they're kind of like life skill learning activities. So for example, on Fridays, we tend to do art. Friday after a morning basket and we're ready for the day, we do either an art project or some other kind of hands-on creative activity. That's what we do on Friday mornings. Thursdays, we do baking in the morning, and then we do a whole literacy poetry team time in the afternoon, which is a huge, fantastic literacy activity. We do that every Thursday. So there are some structured things that are happening outside of like our seated time, but the kids are so excited and it just seems so natural to them and they're so much fun that they just don't even realize that it's school in a sense, right? When you get to have a tea party every week with mom where you get to like drink iced tea and eat cookies while she reads you poetry, it doesn't really feel like you're doing school. And so I don't count it as their like workbook seat time. They just think it's a fun activity that we just happen to do every week is have tea time. It's become part of our routine. And so to them, that's just a part of our day. That's what happens on Thursday afternoons. And so they're still learning through that. We're doing like I said, we're doing a full like poetry study, or we've done author studies or, hymns or Christmas carol studies through poetry tea time. So our kids are doing a lot of learning activities outside of those seated workbook times. It's just a lot of people don't really think to count them. But then this always gets us into the question of like, so why does it take us so little time compared to the school system? And I have a whole video on that. If you're something you want to look at, I'll put it up here. So why does it take so little time compared to the school system? Basically, it comes down to fewer kids and less interruptions. Like that's really the two biggest things that make it so much easier for us and so much more time efficient for us is that we have fewer kids and less interruptions. Less interruptions in terms of I don't have to do any of the bureaucracy that happens in school. So there's no morning announcements. I don't need to take attendance. I don't have to input grades into a specific computer program that is sometimes glitchy. I don't have to answer parents' emails because it's me. I don't have to do pep rallies and school assemblies. I don't have fire drills. Like I don't have any of those things that, are happening in my day. I think that nothing interrupts my day basically, other than occasionally the Amazon man. Always exciting when he shows up. But like, other than that, like I don't have those like bureaucratic interruptions. I also don't have the interruptions that happen as a result of like being in a school system. So like transitions are much easier because it's just our house. My kids don't have to go to a different classroom to do a different subject. Just going from one class to another, for example, from your regular class to maybe the music room or the gym, those transitions can take like 10 minutes. And when you're 10 minutes there, 10 minutes back, that's 20 minutes in your day. Things like that add up really quickly. And I don't think a lot of people realize how quickly those add up. Other things that are transitions that are difficult. Sometimes you're waiting on a teacher. So if you have like a specific art teacher or science teacher who has to come in, sometimes they're delayed, you have to wait, they're coming. That's a delay that happens in your day. And sometimes it's quite frequent. Sometimes you also have the transition of just going from one subject to another, just getting books, handing out textbooks, handing out readers for today, handing out this, all those things add up, especially when you have to track things. Like I remember, because I was a teacher, handing out novel studies to a class of 6th graders that I was, when I was student teaching. That took us like 20 minutes to hand out novel studies, because we have to make sure we pick the novel study that has enough books for our class, because not all of them do. And then we have to like hand them out to each kid, but then we also have to like record what number each kid got and then have those in a system. Like it's a whole thing it's not just like, you don't just like, here's a book, read it. It's a whole system of like making sure that we can get these back so that the next class can use it or you can use it next year. There's a whole thing that goes into that, and that takes time. I've also been in schools where like there wasn't enough science books, so kids didn't get textbooks. They weren't allowed to hold on to their textbooks, or teachers didn't trust kids to hold on to their textbooks because they were getting lost and destroyed. So every time they did a science lesson, not only did the kids have to take out their science notebooks, someone had to go around and pass out science books for everybody. We don't have those kinds of transitions and interruptions in our day. The other reason why homeschooling takes a lot less time is because we're just teaching to a small number of kids. Like I'm teaching Zoe and I'm teaching Alexi, my 2 kids, and that's done. So I'm not giving my kids busy work. I don't think parents realize how much busy work happens in schools just so teachers can do the bureaucracy that they need to do. Like I remember I was giving my students journals. So they had a journal question to answer every morning, and they had to like write in the journal and draw a picture. And I remember parents like, well, why isn't this marked? And why isn't it? I was like, it's not an activity for grades. And they're like, well, why not? I was like, it's so that I can go through all the agendas, take all the pizza money, do the attendance, and get everything ready before morning announcements while I have, a whole bunch of kids in my room. You need to give them something to do so that you can supervise them while you're doing all these other activities. That's busy work. It's not for grades. It's not in the curriculum, but it's something to give them to do. There's also a lot of busy work that happens after a lesson. For example, I tended to be the kind of kid who picked things up quickly, and Alexi would be the kind of kid who picks things up quickly. But, for example, if the lesson was adding and we're like, okay, you have 4 jelly beans and you added 2 jelly beans, you put them together. How many jelly beans do you have? Oh, 6. She's like, oh, so you're just taking this number, and putting them together? Yeah, awesome. Great, I got it. Well, now the teacher needs to explain that 2 or 3 more times in different ways so that the rest of the class can understand, which takes time. And then when it's time for us to actually practice it, it might only take me 10 minutes to do all the practice questions, but it's going to take the kid next to me 30 minutes to do all those practice questions. That's nothing against the other kid. But when you're the kid who finishes early, you now have to kill 20 minutes. Like you just have to sit there. And so that's when you come up with other busy work, or kids who are just sitting there reading. Like I remember spending over half my school day reading in elementary school because I just finished my work a lot quicker than some of the other kids in my class. And teachers can't move on until the last kid is finished or till the time block is done. So when you take out all the interruptions, all the transitions, all of the having to wait for other people, because I don't have to wait. When Alexi's done language, she just starts math. She just starts right away, whether it took her 20 minutes to do her language or 10 minutes. Sometimes she's rushed through it and just like, bang, 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 done. She can just move on. She's not waiting for me to do something else. Like she can just move on and do the next thing. And so that's one of the reasons why homeschooling is so quick and so efficient. And I know this was really brought out in the pandemic. I think a lot of parents were surprised how little work actually gets done during the day and how much of it is filler and how much of their day their kids are just waiting or entertaining themselves in a sense. I have at least one friend who said like that was her reason for homeschooling, because her teacher was sending the work in, everything they were going to do for the day, and the parents would download it and print it off. She goes, my daughter would do everything in like an hour. hour and a half. She'd do the entire day's worth of schoolwork, all the readings, all the math, all the language, all the science activities. She's like, we were done in an hour and a half. And then she's like, well, do I have to sit in front of the computer for the rest of the day? Like, why can't I just do it all and be done? And that's why they ended up homeschooling. So yes, homeschooling takes less time. It gives our kids a chance to explore other things outside of our traditional subjects. It gives them a lot of chance to be creative. It gives them a lot of chance to socialize. So that's it. Thank you so much for watching. If you guys like this video, like I said, subscribe and click the bell to get notifications. And if you guys want to see what like the day-to-day life is like and how a morning goes in my house, make sure you're following me on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next week.